Great. And good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Account-Based Friday. We got a great show today. Joining us from Massachusetts is Bethany Murphy. She's the head of events at Sixth Sense. I'll give you a little tour logistically here in terms of how we set up to get people on board here. I know it takes a few minutes for LinkedIn to kick in, but each week we typically start off with a poll. Before I get into the poll, I will say that you have the ability to ask questions, so feel free to drop your questions. We promote them up. If you have a question about events, Bethany's an expert at this area. Of course, up in the upper right-hand corner, as you're looking at your screen, you can see any of our 175 videos of best practices around B2B marketing. They're typically account-based, but we have spanned all sorts of topics there. So like and subscribe in the upper right-hand corner. This week, we started with a poll around events, and I should say that how I met Bethany, or how I got connected through her, was really her outstanding event. And I don't say this lightly. I go to all of the marketing events. I think in Meg's old world, I went to 10 of your conferences. But what blew me away on Bethany's conference was it was a machine. It was well run. It was very targeted. The logistics were just incredible. And I'm like, I've got to connect with Bethany and get her on here. So I'm super excited to get you here, Bethany. This week's poll, we ask around events and what is the biggest challenge. And I had voted marketing, measuring ROIs. Admittedly, that's our consulting practice, so a little bit self-serving in my answer. But Meg, what was your reaction in that area?
Definitely measuring ROI is the tough thing here. We know that it's easy to do, to find the relationship between event attendance and good outcomes, things like renewals, expansions, new deals. But it's really hard to say $1 of events yields X dollars of revenue or, renewal or whatever it does. So making those connections and really painting the picture and telling the story of the impact of events on not just buyers, but customers and influencers and others in your space. That's the challenge, and it remains the challenge. But hopefully, Bethany, you can share some of your wisdom on that topic with us today. We're super excited you're here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. What got you into the event space to begin with? I'm always curious to know how people find their way to their path.
This is funny. I often tell this story. I was a political science major in college, and I was going to go to law school. And one of my best friends came to me one day, junior year, and she said, I found the perfect career for you. You're going to be an event planner. And I was like, no, that's not true. I'm going to be a lawyer. That's why I'm going to Michigan. I'm going to be a lawyer. So she introduced me to a family friend of hers who owned a medical conference planning company. And I interned for her on site at a couple of events. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. And I came back and I was like, you're right. This is what I'm going to do with my career. So 20 years later, here I am still plugging away, but, much to my parents' dismay, but it's amazing. And I can't imagine doing anything else.
I love that. Well, sometimes where we think we're supposed to go isn't at all. So thank you to your friend for getting you on a different path. But curious, what's your take on event ROI? We might as well jump in on the hard question to get things started. What are some of the ways you look at the return on the events that you put together? And feel free to give us some background on your role and the kinds of events that you have at Sixth Sense.
Yeah, sure. I'll start there. That's easier. So I've been at Sixth Sense a little over a year and a half, and my team manages basically all of our larger scale internal events. So any kind of SKO, President's Club, our incentive. And then really everything customer and prospect facing that's on a larger scale. So the user conference Breakthrough that John was talking about, any third party shows that we sponsor, my team manages those as well. And then kind of some smaller experiential things as well. So we do it. We're a team of 3, but we do a lot.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, ROI is clearly a hot topic and is super challenging. And what I would say is, events are a huge line item for a company, right? Huge line item for marketing. And it's really important that as we continue to grow and spend more money and focus on events, that we do everything we can to hit the goals that we're setting for ROI. And, we have some KPIs that we aim to hit for every event, and source pipeline is a huge one for us. So we're really, really focused on how much pipeline can we source from an event. Influence pipe is also one of our key metrics. And John and I were talking earlier, meetings booked. This is a huge metric for us. And we can talk about that. We can kind of dive into that. But, we really aren't super focused even at our third party events with like the number of leads, right? MQ, like, sure, that's great, but meaningful conversations are so much more important, right? So I don't necessarily care if someone comes by to get swag at our booth. We love swag. We always have great swag. But did we have a conversation with that person, right? And do we think that there's any interest in 6 Sense beyond, our fun swag? So that's really kind of what we're focused on driving toward from a metrics perspective.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that. We could spend the entire 30 minutes on ROI because there's just so many complexities. The thing I'll add is typically I'll describe the behavior that I've seen of not doing it well, which is if you're going back after the event and you're in the situation of asking your salesperson, hey, what happened with this person at XYZ event? Because I need to tag it to get the credit to make sure that I can make the investment in next year's event. That behavior is surprisingly common, and there are ways around it. Conversation for another time. But if you're doing that, that's wrong. I love how you've got the discipline around kind of the process and kind of the meeting book. There's a lot of definitions and processes that go behind it. It's not rocket science, but that's the right way to do it. The wrong way is if you're asking to get things tagged, you're in a bad situation when that happens, in my observation. I'm curious, let's pivot back to you though here, Bethany, in terms of your experience. I had a great experience at your customer event. It was phenomenal. What do you see in terms of contrast between your events that you're tossing or you're running or orchestrating versus, say, a third-party event that you might be sponsoring? Like, where would you compare and contrast those two?
Yeah, I think for us, like, we are going into this year, like, I'm really focused on how do we allocate budgets and spend more money on our own proprietary events, because we have so much more control, right? We control who we invite, we control who's there, we control our brand, which we're super protective of. And we just have seen much better ROI from those type of events. And what I would say is, even when we sponsor third-party shows, which we do a lot, we really focus on how do we drive ancillary events and experiences around those shows, right? How do we leverage the people that are going to be there and then still focus on the people that we want to focus on, and again, be able to kind of bring our brand to life at that show as well. So, I mean, we do a little bit of both. They're both great. And I think it's just finding kind of that right balance between, right mix of proprietary versus third-party sponsored events.
Yeah. And Lenice just asked a really thoughtful question that I suspect a few people are wondering about how do you operationalize and capture the meaningful conversations and hand them off to sales if sales wasn't, if the assigned salesperson, say, wasn't the person that had that conversation? Any recommendations or thoughts for us?
Yeah, so a couple things on that. We use a tool called Jiffle Now, which actually just got acquired by Cvent a couple of weeks ago. A little plug there, but it has changed drastically how we manage meetings for these events. So prior to using Jiffle, we were basically managing all these meetings in a spreadsheet. It was super challenging. So we have done a ton of internal enablement, and now our sales and CS teams, like they know how to use Jiffle. So basically, like a month before the event, we'll start promoting to sales and CS. Hey, we're going to be at this event. Please please book your meetings. We did it for Breakthrough as well. Our user conference, we had like 550 meetings on site in 3 days. John, I'm sure you were in a meeting or two while you were there. But again, like, it's super important for us to have these connections, drive these meetings and have these conversations. And, even I think one of the great things about 6sense is that the sales and CS teams are so invested in our events, right? Like they're so excited anytime we do an event. And so, I've been in events for 20 years. I've had a lot of sales teams that are like, I don't want to go on site if these aren't my accounts, right? I don't want to talk to these people. They're not my accounts. We don't have that problem, right? So as an example, we go to Forrester Summit, we book 250 meetings. We can't have every salesperson there, every CS person there, right? So if someone takes a meeting for someone else, they just take notes in the tool, they capture it, and it all goes into our CRM after the event. So it has really streamlined the process for sure.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing because that is a big pain point of, especially with the cost of travel. You can't send everybody there, and the time that it takes a salesperson away from his or her day-to-day job, all of a sudden you're porting them into the event. So that's a pretty amazing tool that you're sharing there. Are there other tools that you're seeing, particularly with AI, that are helpful, whether it be your own tool or other tools that you're starting to see emerge onto the event scene?
Yeah, so conversational email is one of 6sense. One of 6sense's products, and we use that from an event perspective. So it is. We'll focus. Let's just use Forrester again because we're talking about that event. But we set up a conversational email campaign or two, and we can basically reach out to people through this generative AI, and ask people if they want to book meetings, right? So we'll say, Latney is going to be on site. Do you want to book a meeting with Latney? And everyone wants to talk to Latney. So we get a lot of hand raises there, right? But it's a way to kind of identify, save a ton of time from the SDRs and the BDRs and outreach, and really identify those hand raisers. And that has saved a ton of time. And the AI, like a lot of people have no idea that they're talking to a bot, right? And then at some point, if the conversation gets to the point that we need human, interaction, we always have someone on our team kind of monitoring the conversation, but we've seen great success and conversion using conversational email. Another tool that I went to SEMA Summit, which is an event for event marketers this summer, and they talked a lot about Spark, and that's a generative AI tool. And I think the main focus of that is taking session content and summarizing and getting key takeaways. And it's just, again, kind of streamlining the planning process there. But I haven't used it personally. It's on my list to check out. I don't know if they have a free version, but certainly seeing some tools pop up in the marketplace as well.
You bring up a really good point about content at events. So much goes into creating the content for your own events, for outside events. And you mentioned Spark as a tool that you would potentially try to get more kind of airtime or more use out of that content. What are some of the ways you share the content that comes out of events, or some other ways that you get more than just the on-site experience from that content?
Yeah, I think this is kind of an ongoing challenge, right? How do we take event content and really expand the life cycle of it, right? Because we spend a lot of time and energy creating this content, and then after the event, like where does it go, right? So we have an amazing online customer community called Rev City. You don't need to be a 6sense customer to access, although there are certain things you'll see only as a customer. But we basically take all of our post-event content and we host it in Rev City. And then we write blogs and create other content that kind of drives people to those presentations. And we see great success with people going in throughout the year and really watching that content. So, I would encourage all the events folks out there, like, do the best you can to reuse that content. Again, you spend months and months developing it and it's super valuable and you want to be able to use it post-event. We take snippets, we put it, in kind of content throughout the year. So definitely make sure that you're doing that as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, I wanted to promote a comment here, but I de-anonymized it. And it was a question around playbooks. And I'll give you a moment to read through it. But essentially, this person was asking, whether it's AWS or any company, do you have like a standardized playbook for either customer events or third-party events? Like how do you approach the strategy of an event playbook wise?
Yeah, I think what we try to do is really figure out what are the goals, like start with the goals, right? What are you trying to achieve from this event and then develop a strategy from there. So, we invest in all different levels in a lot of third-party shows. And so I think it really depends on what is the level of investment you're looking to make. But I'll use Adobe Summit as an example. We're going to Adobe. Last year, we had a really small turnkey booth. We didn't invest a ton because it was our first year live at the show. And we had like a line at our booth. I mean, we didn't have enough space, right? So this year, we looked at the results from last year. I talked to everyone on site, right? I think that's really important. And then said, okay, look, we have a little more money to spend. Let's potentially not sponsor one of the other events we did in Q1 and spend that money and up our investment at Adobe. So this year we're going in, we're having a bigger booth. We're doing an ancillary event that we've had a lot of interest in. So again, is it brand, or what are you trying to accomplish? Is it thought leadership? Is it brand awareness? Is it just number of lead, right? Figure out what you're trying to accomplish and then develop a strategy kind of backwards from there. So it's a hard question to answer. I mean, I think again, it's what is your budget? What are your goals? And then kind of figure out how to maximize the budget to hit those goals. And it's different for every show.
I think that's a great point, Bethany, because I think sometimes you can have a playbook that actually won't work because what you're trying to achieve, it's not addressing what you're trying to achieve. So I think that reminder to go back and say, what are we trying to get out of this? And also, I think to your earlier point about sales and customer success, make sure everyone's on the same page in terms of what you're trying to get out of a given event and how you're going to measure success. Because if you do that up front, you're going to not have unfortunate conversations down the road. But
yeah, and I would say, sorry to interrupt, but I would say right there, like every time we have a kickoff meeting and we're launching an event, like the number one thing we start with is the goals, right? What are the goals? What are we trying to achieve? Like, let's all get on the same page here. And then we can talk about the fun stuff later, right? But like, what are we trying to accomplish? What ROI are we trying to drive? What pipeline? How many meetings? Like, let's get everyone on the same page from the get-go.
Well, and one thing you mentioned having a really engaged Salesforce and customer success team, which is amazing. What kinds of enablement do you provide to them to help them with their event outreach if you do?
A lot. A lot. We spend a lot of time on enablement. I was amazed actually when I started at Cvent, like the amount of crazy enablement that we do. But we basically have kickoff calls and we invite all of sales and CS. We get on this bi-weekly Monday call that we have anytime we have event updates to the whole sales and CS, the whole revenue org basically, to talk about it. We have office hours. We do Jiffle trainings. We have videos. We do email templates. So we use a couple of different tools, but we create email templates. Like we try to make it as easy as possible and give them as much information as they possibly can. And again, we're super lucky. Like they are just so excited about our events that it makes our job much easier.
Just listening to kind of how you're talking about your own events, you're at a level of maturity here that probably a number of companies would envy. They would have the tailwind. It sounds like you've got, well, we know firsthand because we're marketers. You're in a marketing organization, so you're marketing to marketers. So you got a little bit of tailwind there. You got a great leader, phenomenal leader with Lotney. She's a believer. By the way, I think we're all going to be working for Lotney one day. That's another conversation for another time. She's amazing. She is amazing. But I'm trying to contrast that to my own. Like many years ago, when I was head of marketing, there seemed like there were two flavors of events that we would run. Either it was marketing's idea or it was sales idea of, hey, we've always been at this event, therefore we need to go. What advice would you give to somebody to bridge that gap of how do they become a Bethany, or how do they become the maturity of what you guys are doing collectively in events? Like what 2 or 3 things would you say, what, you may not be here, but these 3 things you can get further toward where you are today?
Yeah. I mean, I would say number one is like what you said, John, that is like my most, that makes me cringe. Like we've always gone to this event. We should go to this event because we've always gone to it. Like that is not a good way to decide what events to invest in. Right. And so I would say like, look really carefully at how you're investing your money, right? Like get lists. If you're thinking about sponsoring a show, ask for lists, right? Are they in your ICP? Is this your target audience? How many, percentage of customer accounts versus prospect accounts? Really look at the data and make an informed decision about how you're investing your money, because you could end up going to a show 10 years in a row and like having no ROI at all, right? And so, secondly, like look back and analyze past event data to drive decisions moving forward. So, we had gone to a show for many, many years, and I looked back and said, like, we've been spending X amount of money. We've been driving X amount of ROI. This is not up to like where we want to be. And so, you know what, we're going to take a year off from the show and we're going to see what happens. And we're going to reinvest our money in Q1 elsewhere to try to drive more impact. So, and thirdly, look, like I was lucky. I came into Sixth Sense, and Sixth Sense has like such an amazing brand in the MarTech space. And again, has an amazing internal cross-functional team that really, and an executive team that supports events. And that's super important. And I think without that, like it's tough, right? Again, events are a huge line item in the marketing budget and the company budget. And so, how are we making sure as event leaders that we're being fiscally responsible and really driving the most business impact for the money that we're spending?
Yeah, great point. Thank you. And I think that having a set of criteria that you use to evaluate events makes it a lot easier to be like, well, I'm going to say no to this, but here's why. It's not like I just don't feel like it.
Right.
There's a reason here.
Which sometimes I don't feel like it. I have too many events, right? But that's not a good reason.
But probably not going to fly.
Yeah.
But Nick asks another really great question, which is critical post-event activities for marketing to help accelerate event ROI. Thoughts on that for Nick?
That is a great question. I would say like make sure that you are getting your leads as quickly as possible, handing them over to MOPS and getting them in your system for processing, right? Like event follow-up should be within 24 hours of the event, because otherwise people go home and they kind of forget about it, right? And you've made this huge investment and it's probably not going to do much for you. Build a relationship with sales, right? Like we have biweekly connects with our BDR team. We're always having conversations. We're prepping them for what's coming down the line. And we're having those conversations with them post-event, right? We're sending Slacks to all of our internal teams with post-event templates, follow-up emails, and we're really trying to focus them on those meaningful conversations versus those people just, wanting a cool Stanley mug from our booth. And so have a process, right? And really kind of make sure that post-event sales is following up on the leads. You're tracking those leads through the process. And again, you're making sure that the money you spent is worthwhile.
How about on the working of the booth in a third-party event area, where there always seems, in my mind, there seems to be a bit of a debate with sales of saying, that's not a good use of time. I don't want to put my AEs, SDR, BDR, marketing, therefore you are going to man the booth or staff the booth is probably a better way of saying it. Yeah. What would you advise companies there? Like, what's the best approach, or what have you seen work or not work in terms of the booth staffing? Because that's always like a hot potato, and everybody wants to be out partying late the night before and not necessarily work the booth. Yes. So like, what are you seeing there?
Yeah. I was thinking about this the other day, and I have been at companies where it was like pulling teeth to get staff, to get sales at a booth, right? Like, these aren't my accounts. Why would I want to be there? This isn't going to do anything for me. And I think, again, like I don't find that at Sixth Sense. I think the sales and CS teams, it's like we're one team, right? Like, we're all here for a reason. Sure, it might not be my account at the end of the day, but like, we're all here to do what's best for the business. What I would say is like, have diversity in your booth staff. I mean, we don't staff a booth with only sales, right? We look at like, again, what are we trying to accomplish here? I mean, do we have thought leadership at any point, right? Do we have subject matter experts? We always have a couple sales. I think BDRs are awesome at a booth, right? They are eager beavers. They're so excited to talk to people in real life. I love having BDRs at the booth. Have an SC. I mean, we always try to have an SC for, if people really want to get in the weeds, like, it's great to have a subject matter expert there. And then someone in, marketing, either like logistics, And if you can, like a product marketing, I mean, we leverage our product marketing team a lot on site at our events because they are subject matter experts as well. So it's challenging, but what I would say is like, it's hard to change sales behavior, number one, but this is like not about you, right? This isn't about you. This is about the company and driving business. And so, but again, look at the account list that's going to be there and really pick what makes sense from a sales perspective. Like we have 3 segments, right? So is this a strat play? Is it enterprise? And that helps a little bit too in figuring out who should be there and validating from a sales perspective.
I think what I'm hearing a lot of is really being thoughtful about all the different kinds of experiences you want to deliver to the attendees at the event. What kind of information are you trying to give them? What kind of relationship experience? What kind of, in general, fun experience are you trying to give? How do you think about that? How do you balance all those things when you're doing planning for an event?
Yeah, I think now, like it takes a lot for people to want to go to an event. Right. You used to just like throw an invite for a dinner and people would want to come. Now it's like, you got to leave your house. You got to put real clothes on. Like it takes a lot, and so how do you create meaningful experiences? Right. Like we're always looking to do kind of cool and unique things. Like John was in Frisco with us. And we really tried to carry the theme. Like we were in Texas, right? And we kind of went all in on the Texas theme. And how do we create those local experiences, right? Bring local musicians, like create experiences that they can't get at home. And networking, right? Like how do you, I want to go to events to meet other events people and talk about events. I could talk about events all day, right? So how do you kind of create those networking experiences? I mean, the content is obviously key as well, but, the brand helps, right? People love Sixth Sense, and that's super helpful. But again, how do we bring our brand to life and create these interactive, fun, different experiences? And so we try really hard to do that at every event that we go to. So.
Yeah, I'm just going to add one thing to your pick out the clothes and make sure you fit in your clothes. You probably don't have that problem, but speaking on behalf of a couple guys, myself included, it's definitely a challenge. And you're right. You're trying to pull somebody away from potentially the comfort of their home or home environment, maybe not the same work environment that we were in 3 or 4 years ago. So the bar is raised, and the cost to go to an event now. And I'm not saying that your event was expensive. I'm just saying logistically of the flight, if you get there, within a day of when you think you're going to get there. I mean, it's just incredible now. The logistics and the cost are really a factor, I think, too.
Yeah, for sure.
We're just about at time here. Any closing thoughts on kind of what you see in the future of events with AI or resources or any other things you'd like to close out with here?
No, I mean, again, I think it's really, we all can put on an event, right? But I think now you have to be really thoughtful. And again, like from the entire attendee journey experience, right? How are you kind of creating those moments? How are you, pre-event, touching those people on site, again, like having those conversations, making sure that we make sure that every account that goes to Breakthrough has a conversation with either a sales or CS or an SME, right? Like is having those conversations because that's what's going to drive adoption, resell, upsell, right? Like that's the goal at the end of the day. And so, I think take a step back, think about what you're trying to accomplish, and then really think about what it's going to take to get you there. And whether that's, pipeline or number of leads scanned, it doesn't really matter, but just make sure you know what the goals are and be transparent internally about what those goals are, right? And again, make sure everyone's on the same page because that's what's going to help you get there. At the end of the day, sales and CS also want upsell, renewals, new business, right? Like we're all aiming for the same thing here. So it's a team effort for sure, but it's fun. It's fun. Events are awesome.
Well, so great that you could join us here, Bethany. Meg, I don't know if you any closing thoughts on your side?
Well, again, thank you for being here. I do have one question. Most fun swag you've seen at an event lately, yours or somebody else's?
We love swag. So I just helped with our all company swag. We send a box to all of our employees, and we did Lululemon hoodies, and they were like a huge hit. And so, and these Awala water bottles, we did them at Breakthrough. We just did them again. People are obsessed with these. They're the new Stanley. So, and this one's teal. So, we always try to bring teal into our swag, even if we're not branding swag. How can we give away some cool teal items to make people remember Sixth Sense?
I love it. Well, thank you very, very much for joining us and for sharing your knowledge.
This was so fun. I really
talk about
appreciate
this all day. But it looks like you're teeing up next week's guest,
Exactly. Take it away.
Yes, super excited to have Brandon joining us. He and I worked together actually at Engagio, which was a competitor to Sixth Sense back in the day. And he has been on an incredible journey that has led him to now being at Chili Piper. And he has really, I think, built up a body of knowledge and advice around B2B go-to-market that I'm excited for him to share with us next week. He's really built up kind of his sense of content on and sense of community that he's really building in the B2B space. So excited for him to talk about that, as well as the role of fractional CMOs and kind of that emerging important position within the B2B ecosystem. So excited to have Brandon next week. And Bethany, excited to have you this week. Thank you again so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Excellent. And just a reminder, like and subscribe. If you got any value from this, we've got 175 other videos, or if you just have a question, feel free to reach out and I can point you in the right direction so you're not leafing through 175 videos to get your answer. So with that, thanks again, Bethany, and we'll see you same time next week with Brandon and Meg and I, and look forward to that